Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, season 12, PeaksChatz. My name is Magellan, and how's Alan? How's Alan? How's Alan? Oh, yeah, it's Alan.
Your ability to turn a horrifying scene into a cartoon is unparalleled.
It's the only way I can cope with it.
Yeah, it's a very scary movie about clowns. That's fair. Anyways, that's all the jokes I have for today. Good night, everyone. Don't forget to tip someone.
Tip.
Don't forget to tip. Don't forget to tip. Hey, everybody. It's PeaksChatz. Hi, Magellan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
It's the podcast that keeps on giving.
It's a very special day here on PeaksChatz because we are watching the final episode of the original run of Twin Peaks.
Uh-oh.
Does the return have a theme song? Does it use the Twin Peaks theme song?
I believe it uses... I was just thinking this when you were playing that earlier. I believe it's the same one.
Okay, thank goodness, because I really don't want to change the theme song. I was starting to feel sad that I was singing it in silence for the last time.
Yeah, it's the same. The visual is different, but it's the same song.
Phew. All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we watched season 2, episode 22, Beyond Life and Death. It was directed by David Lynch himself.
Wow. Yum.
Written by Mark Frost, Harley Payton, Robert Engels, the whole crew took a hand at writing this one, and uncredited writing credits to David Lynch, which to me means that on the set he was like, "No, don't do it that way. Do it this way."
Well, every time I that's probably true, but every time I hear about like how he directs or how he even casts people, it's always like, oh, that guy had a funny face and I thought he like ate his sandwich in a cool way, so he's my main character. He's the head of the franchise, and Kyle MacLachlan's name can be changed to Kale really easily, so he's the head of this franchise too. So that makes sense. Yeah. I was going to say things that don't make sense of the Twin Peaks finale, but we're older now than when we first watched this. We understand, and we have the context to talk about Beyond Life and Death.
Yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, it's actually, after I watched it, I looked up a bunch of stuff, season 2 finale explained. Nothing, and I made sure it was stuff that was written before the return came out. But so I wouldn't spoil anything. But it was all stuff where I was like, okay, yep, got that. Yep, that makes sense. Okay. I guess I got it. I guess I know what happened.
Yeah, it's a fascinating work. Let's introduce it and then let's talk about it?
Yeah.
Oh, so in this episode, I forgot that's the thing I do.
I don't think I asked you. Sorry. It aired on June 10th.
June 10th, 1991. It's summer, baby. Summertime sadness.
Yeah. What happened in this episode of Twin Peaks?
In the series finale of Twin Peaks, Agent Cooper follows Wyndham Earle and Annie into the depths of the Black Lodge. Big Ed and Norma get a shock when Nadine suffers head trauma. Andrew and Pete unlock Eckhart's final box, and Audrey stages an act of civil disobedience. That's one of the best summaries that they have written.
It really makes all those other plots seem important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what's interesting about, saying that this is not a complicated finale, is it's more so about cleaning up and shoring up the debts of this season, and saying, okay, we have a lot of nonsense. We need to clear the board as much as we can for what was going to be a season 3. I mean, this was not intended to be a series finale at the time. As I understand it, there was an entirely different, a fairly different shooting script that was in place before Lynch came in and before they, did a lot of tweaking to make it more of a finale. And so seeing the realities of TV production, as it has always been for Twin Peaks, is really interesting and informs how we think about the ending in certain ways. Because I'd be so curious to hear what people who don't know what the return is about think the ending of this season means. Because I think we are biased a little bit by knowing the basic elevator pitch of where season 3 starts, that it answers how this season ends, because it's not as clear as it is in my head, in your head.
I think there's one sort of nuance that is made much more clear by the return, but I think in general people understand the like broad strokes of where things are by the end of this episode.
Yeah, and it's just made clear in like the first 30 seconds or whatever of the return. So it's not like you're not equipped to get it right now. And like you said, you could read it. You could when you sent me like some theories that people had before the return came out. Several people just figured it out. They like understood what the ending means.
Are we going to need a spoiler zone on this episode, do you think?
On this episode, no. I mean, it's a correct theory, right? It's something that people theorized when this episode came out. It's textually what happens in this episode. It's just that it's confirmed because there's more Twin Peaks. We know this is correct for sure.
And you're talking about
Cooper,
just doppelgooper, being a doppelganger.
There's another person outside that got out of the Black Lodge.
Yeah, who looks like Cooper and is not Cooper, and Bob is inside of him.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I strapped myself in for like a very spooky episode. I said, okay, David Lynch is directing it. It's like 11:30 at night. I watched this last night, and all lights off. Everyone's asleep. Got the big headphones. And then we open on the Log Lady, the final Log Lady intro ever, because she didn't make them for Catherine Coulson, unfortunately passed away, I believe, during the filming of season 3. But here is our final Log Lady intro to kind of set the tone. And now an ending. Where there was once one, there is now two. Or was there always two? What is a reflection? A chance to see two? When there are chances for reflections, there can always be two or more. Only when we are everywhere will there just be one. It has been a pleasure speaking to you. And then we extreme close-up on her eye and then have a jump cut to a white fade, which is just unsettling for no reason.
Okay, sure.
So it's time. Everyone's ready. We have set up so many different plots. The Mill plot has become the Andrew lockbox plot. We've got Pete in there. We've got Audrey ready to fight back against her dad. Her dad has revealed his parentage to Donna as well. What's going to happen to all these things?
Can I want to do a bit of a, I guess this isn't really a game, but I want to hear your opinion on this. So let's just lay out the way that this episode resolves season 2 plots in like a snap of the fingers.
Yeah.
And I want to hear which ones, like how you rank them, basically. So let's see. We have, like you were saying, Audrey Horne has decided to do the stop Ghostwood thing, and she does civil disobedience at the bank and is theoretically involved in the explosion that also, in theory, kills Andrew Packard and Pete Martell. So that's also the resolution to the box thing. That's 2. Then you've got Bobby and Shelley are like, maybe we're going to get married. That's 3. We brief cutaway to Leo still trapped. That's 4. 2 seconds. That's the 4th one. The whole Ben Horne, Donna, everybody, Hayward Horne situation. That's 5.
Yeah.
Doc Hayward clocks Ben Horne in the face and
throws him against the
fireplace.
Yeah.
What else? Are there any? Oh, Nadine. And then the Nadine stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the 6, I think. Right. How of those? How do you rank those? Which ones worked for you? Which ones were the most frustrating?
They are all good. Is the thing.
Okay.
They're all pretty good. So the bank one is hilarious to me because it really, really feels like somebody came into the writer's room, it's like, Troy walking into the house in Community and it's all on fire and he has the pizza and he's like, oh my God. And just like nukes the plot and just says, no, stop. Audrey, no, get out of here. Pete Martell and Andrew in a lockbox and shut up. It's a bomb. Stop talking. And it genuinely feels like not a middle finger, but just a like, we can't this is not a sustainable plot line. We need to end this. And having bombs in a plot like that is actually a very soap opera thing. Like you incorporate a bomb plot because it gets rid of characters easily and resolves things nicely. I think you made a funny point in your notes that one is it's so funny then that the puzzle box was so easy to open because of course it is. It opens a bomb. Right.
It just, why did Andrew Packard think that there was going to be something good in there? This guy hates his guts, was his rival for forever. He gets a mysterious box from him and he's like, well, I got to open it. I got to use the key. It's obviously going to be a great treasure that he's left me. so stupid.
It's a bomb.
But yeah, I liked how that one ended because the plot became so farcical.
And Del Mibbler.
And Del Mibbler, of course. And he makes great sounds just like the mayor does, such as this one.
Okay.
Miss.
It's the sound that I had. And we got a wonderful long shot of him going down to the water thing to get a cup of water for Audrey and then giving her the cup of water. That was awesome. I really thought it was funny that Audrey was like, hey, can you give Dwayne Milford a call? And she doesn't know that he died of sex a little while ago.
Dougie's the one who died of sex. Dwayne is the one who's still alive.
No, Dwayne. Well, she says contact Dwayne.
The one
Milford,
from the Gazette. You're right. You're right.
Gazette.
She doesn't know. Oh my God.
Yeah, the news hasn't gotten to her because the news editor guy, I guess, is dead and couldn't publish the news at his own death. And then, by the way, just a quick Milford thing. It's answered in the final dossier.
Yeah.
That in the absence of Annie, the crown for the Miss Twin Peaks pageant goes to Lana Milford.
Lana Milford, perfect, super good.
First runner-up. So there's an answer for that out there. Anyway, and then I also really enjoyed in this plot where when Andrew and Pete saw Audrey chained to the door of the vault, they're both like, "Oh, hey Audrey, what's up?" And she's like, "Oh, hey Pete." And then Andrew's like, "I see no problem with this. Could we just squeak by, get into the vault?"
He like quotes Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius, yeah.
Fantastic. He's just like, all right, this is happening. No, okay, that's fine with me. Whatever.
Anyway, can we just get past? And she's like, oh, yeah, sure. Just not very good at the whole civil disobedience thing.
I just got out a pen and paper and I'm writing all these plots down so I can actually do an appropriate ranking because I know we mentioned doing that. So
Yeah. Let's
who needs a season ranking when I can rank all the dumb plots in the finale? That's much better to me. Okay, so we got the bank, we got Ben Horn, we've got the fucking Bobby Shelley.
Yep, and Leo.
Bobby
which
Shelley,
Leo. I guess we could just call that one thing.
We've got Norma Nadine and Ed.
Yep, and I think that's all the season 2 stuff that's resolved in this one. And I guess Andy Lucy are like, I love you.
Yeah, well, that's literally the first scene of the episode. It's great. They assert their love. I love how quiet that scene is. That's how you know you're watching a David Lynch thing, when he just lets things be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pretty quiet finale, all things considered. The music more takes place during the Black Lodge stuff, but otherwise it's just like, all right, these are humans living their lives.
Yeah, there's something about, I mean, we don't need to sort of shower David Lynch with too much praise, but I think what this episode really communicates is how different it feels when he does his stuff versus when other directors try to do, like the way that the condemned woman brought in Bob and the man from another place in this sort of like frenetic, panicked, like, look, it's Twin Peaks. Oh my God, look. And in this episode, David Lynch has those images kind of like spread throughout, and he cuts away from them to go back to stupid stuff or to comedy or to these like long drawn out moments. And there's just a patience in this episode that I think that quality is really what sets it apart from when other people try to, like in other episodes of Twin Peaks, take those images and do stuff with them. And I really like that too.
Right. I can actually come out the gate and say that my least favorite right now, my gut reaction least favorite of these plots is Bobby Shelley Leo. Which is disappointing because I like two of those characters a lot. The reason is, one, Leo Johnson, abusive, wife assaulter, horrible person, criminal, has done horrible things. His final shot is like a 2 millisecond shot where he has his teeth are holding onto the string that's keeping him from getting a cage full of spiders on his head. That's it. He's not coming back. He's not dead. Who the fuck cares? And the thing that bums me out about the Bobby and Shelley one is that, even more so than a lot of these plot lines, assumes nothing happened since the pilot. They even brought back Heidi. Like that literally feels like that whole scene is just in reference to the pilot.
I had no idea who that was.
She was only in the pilot. And so it's like, did they just that plot line is a sequel to the pilot. And nothing else, which is so interesting to me because it's them going, I love you, Shelley. I love you, Bobby. Oh, but Leo. Oh, well, Leo's probably out there doing something. And it's like, 2 seasons of development thrown in the trash. Don't care. And I find that interesting, like I said, because, Lynch has been distancing himself from the script and it's the showrunners trying to be like, okay, we need to reset these characters a little bit. This is too much of a mess.
Yeah.
But to leave it just like, okay, yeah, it's exactly where it was. Feels like a bummer, I guess. It's kind of hollow. It's like, what did I invest in for all this time?
Right. Yeah, because I think season 2 really squandered the Bobby Shelley relationship because early in the season, there was all this pathos building around like Bobby is like saying, I love you back. Like this isn't just them having a tryst or a romance or whatever. There's like a lot of deep, genuine emotion here. And that was really cool. And then Bobby starts to stray from the relationship and he's like, I'm going to be a businessman. And that was upsetting, but there could have been some sort of like narrative development behind that. And instead what we do is he just says, anyway, I'm sorry. And we're back to this, which is like a very pleasant situation to be in. But like you're saying, it doesn't feel like a culmination of a season's worth of development in these characters, like figuring out their problems. It's just sort of like they got pushed into the background. And then at the very end, it's like, oh, and by the way, they love each other. See ya.
Yeah. Love prevails. Just like, Major Briggs said an episode or two ago, his biggest fear is that love is not enough. It's like in their case, yeah, love was enough. Good. Great.
Yeah. And that all said, the plot is awesome because of this moment.
Again, it's them just being like, remember the cute thing we did in the pilot that people liked a lot? Yeah. That scene is also punctuated. This is not in the like umbrella of plots. I guess it's in the Black Lodge plot, but the reintroduction of Sarah.
Yeah. Hey, Sarah Palmer, what's up? Welcome back to the show.
Good to see you. Hope you've been well. What are you up to? How are your things?
Weird. Yeah.
And she opens her mouth and sounds come out that might not be from her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part was all very spooky, but that definitely ties back into the Black Lodge stuff. So I see here you've put 5 points down. What am I missing? I see I have Bank, Ben, Nadine, Bobby, Shelley, Leo. Oh, Andy Lucy.
Not include Andy Lucy. Because it kind of has already been resolved.
It's a single scene. Love prevails. Again, love prevails.
We'll just cut that one out.
Yeah. So then, in my order, I have number 1 is the Bank. Because just nuking the plot is so funny to me. And if you don't like watching Del Mibler walk across the hallway for 5 minutes, you might need to check out a Twin Peaks now because you're going to get a lot of that in Fire Walk with Me and The Return. So
The Return has a lot of that.
Yeah, there's like infamous scenes of stuff like that. So it's fun. Yeah. I enjoy it. And we enjoy it. So be ready for that. My bottom is Bobby, Shelley, Leo because like you said, like I was saying, it feels like it's disregarding an entire show's worth of development. My number 2 and my number 3 are close. My number 3, so I'm going now bottom up, is Nadine. Nadine, Ed, Norma. Because it does understand that a whole season happened, and that works much better. But it's so sad. It's so sad for everyone involved.
It's literally the saddest possible way you could have ended this plot.
Yeah. What did you think was going to happen? It's reality returns to Ed and Norma's like soap opera dream. Right. And Nadine was bonked on the head after the Miss Twin Peaks pageant. Mike finally professes his love to her and says he wants to marry her. And she's back to her old self. She's again returning to the pilot. What happened to the Drape Runners? And she has the wound and she's talking about the Drape Runners and Ed is freaking out and Ed and Norma are left holding the bag. Oh, we don't get to get married anymore because my wife is fully conscious and knows that she's 35 and Mike is left alone again. Ed and Norma are torn apart again, and Nadine is miserable. Nobody comes out of this plot happy.
No, it really. And I think an issue I had with it was that, like, it just kind of, I don't know, everything that Jacoby was saying about like, okay, she's going to come back to reality bit by bit. It all just became a sandbag that fell from the roof and snapped her out of it, right? There wasn't any sort of psychological reason or narrative reason or character reason why Nadine suddenly remembers and is back to reality again. It just was a convenience of the plot. It's the last episode and we have to resolve it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that also kind of reverts the dynamic of Nadine and Norma to where we started, except I guess the difference now is that it's like out in the open. But it really seemed like if there was any narrative purpose in Nadine being a teenager, it was for her to work through the issues that she has with Ed and Norma's relationship and the feelings of like inferiority that came with it for her, and to kind of like reclaim something of herself in the process of returning to that moment. And she isn't given the chance in the story to like carry that back into her life, right? She just forgets all of it and is none the better off for that time spent like coping with this reality in the way that she was.
Also worth noting, Nadine's no longer, we don't see her use any superpower in this episode. Like, Nadine has fully become a person again. And I think it's fascinating because very early on in season 1, we talked about how obvious it is that the Shelley and Norma plots parallel each other. And it's, again, just so interesting how they have looped back around. And Shelley and Bobby, who were like the dreamers, the not realists, get to have their happy ending. And it's Norma and Ed who like wanted this dream, but are pulled back to reality, which is deeply sad and tragic for them because, you know, in a way, some of this is about people making this episode in general is about people making sacrifices that they have to make and understanding that like the real world, you can't do these things all for your whole life. Yeah. And that even ties back into the Black Lodge stuff, which we'll talk about.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's very sad, and I'm bummed to see that. I see here though that you have ranked Bank number 1, Bobby, Shelley, Leo number 2.
The reason is because it gives me a nice feeling. It's just a happy ending. It's not necessarily narratively rich, but the Norma Nadine Ed stuff is just so sad. And I've hated the Ben Horn Donna Hayward plot since it started. Yeah. And it just ends. We can talk about that now. Yeah. It just ends the way you would think it would, there's like nothing to it.
It's so funny. Well, it's funny that we talked about them in this order because Doc Hayward literally goes from that tragic Nadine scene and then like closes the door on their house, opens the door to his own house, and honey, I'm home. Oh God, I'm in a soap opera plot here too. I can't escape soap operas. That one felt. Let's talk about this Ben Horn scene for a bit. It felt so soap opera. The way that like people just walk in conveniently, like to the point where when Ben's wife comes in, he goes, "Sylvia, I told you to stay home," and it's like everyone's here. Let's bring in Doc Hayward. Let's bring in his wife. Let's bring in Donna. Come on, everyone, come into the house. The Hayward house is now a place of violence and tragedy, just like the Palmer house is. Ben tries to apologize to Donna for what happened, but he says, going back to his whole "I want to be a good person" thing, that telling you felt good and that I'm glad I did it, and I am sorry if it hurt you. I know that I've hurt the family. Totally valid. Good point for him. Donna's not having it and is ready to leave. Her mother, who now I'm really seeing the Deschanel in her, which is like weird, is like, "Oh no, Donna, like let's, I just want things to be normal again." Doc Hayward walks in and is like, "Ben, you son of a gun. How dare you do this? You've ruined my family once again." Ben is genuinely trying to seek forgiveness here.
Yeah, I think we were talking last time about how it's a little confusing how his like "I want to do good" stuff is so transparently manipulative with regard to the Ghostwood stuff and with regard to like his own daughter Audrey, who he's manipulating into doing Stop Ghostwood stuff. Yeah. But with this plot, like you're saying, he seems to be very genuine. It doesn't seem like there's any ulterior motive here unless he's just a vindictive, like, ass who wants to ruin everybody's life for some reason, but it doesn't really seem that way. It just seems like he has a very sort of narrow, misguided understanding of what it means to be good. Like, there's a difference between, I don't know. It just, obviously, it's good to be honest, and also the way that he went about it was damaging.
Yeah, and it's still selfish of him to be like,
yes,
made me feel good to tell you I don't care that I ruined a family. And again, and in my effort to like tie this all back to the overall theme of like, how do we seek redemption? How do we return to what we consider normal? A sacrifice must be made, right? The only way to return the Hayward family back to this like nice Christian, vegan lasagna or whatever, vegetarian lasagna family, is for Ben to be taken out of the picture. And so Doc Hayward goes full David Lynch character mode, smashes Ben, fights Ben, beats him up, and then like knocks his head against the fireplace, leaving a bloody gash on his head, and he's knocked out. And he cries, like grasps his face and like starts like, yelling and stuff. It's very striking, pun not intended. And it feels like this is the only way. You have to get rid of these characters. You simply cannot just keep Ben being Ben forever. It's going to continue to tear the Hayward family apart. We need to clear the board once again.
Yeah. And ultimately that's a price that like maybe is not worth paying, right? Because Doc Hayward does not feel particularly good about doing that. Yeah.
Maybe Ben could have lived through that, but he did. But his fate is in the balance at this point.
Also, hey Sylvia Horn, welcome to the show.
To Twin Peaks. Good to see you, pal. How are you?
I have not seen you since the brie and butter sandwiches incident.
Hold on, let me see all the episodes that she's in.
It has to be that. Oh no, they were like talking through the wall in the Laura's funeral episode, I think.
Okay, 2, 3 is 3 Laura's funeral. Yeah, that's it. 2, 3, and then this one or pilot 2 and 3. That's it. And then she hasn't been seen since episode 3. So, hello Sylvia Horn, welcome back.
Yeah.
That actress Jan Darcy deserves better.
Yes, definitely.
Big time. But it's just so weird. Like, it's hilarious that I didn't remember what happens to Ben Horn when the answer is like he gets beat up, he gets his ass kicked.
yeah.
By Doc Hayward of all people, the like nice, giggly, friendly doctor. Scott Frost's just out here throwing people into fireplaces. So it's another just like, all right, this is how this has to end. Let's take care of this.
Wait. Doc Hayward is Scott Frost.
Wait, no.
Or is he a different Frost? Because Scott Frost is the one who's written some episodes that we did not like, right?
Yes. Hold on.
Or that we thought were like kind of misogynist.
This is Warren Frost. Oh my God!
This is their dad, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Correct. This Frost is the father of Twin Peaks co-creator Mark Frost and writer Scott Frost. Got it. That's the whole family that we know of. Okay. Great.
Gotcha.
I'm glad it took us the end of the show to finally figure that out. Scott Frost, the writer, was an Icelandic businessman in episode 5. Fun fact. In Cooper's Dreams.
Sure.
So, speaking of Cooper's Dreams, I think it's time to talk about what occupies the majority of this episode.
Just do all of that stuff right now. Let's get in there.
So, this is the stuff that is quote unquote important. I love all the other stuff we've talked about. We found it interesting. We love talking about it. But here we are. We're back with the red room curtains. We're in the Black Lodge. Cooper has found the secret. First off, we're in the police office, and Pete Martell comes in, and somebody asks him, "Hey, Pete, what's your favorite Rockstar property?"
Grand Theft Auto.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate that. Seems kind of random to tell us about your video game fandom, but go off, I guess. I thank you for pulling that clip. I needed that joke to be on episode. Pete thinks that the log lady stole his car, but actually it was Wyndham Earl. He doesn't realize disguises. They figure out some lore stuff that I'm curious what you thought about it. Glastonbury Grove is where the Black Lodge portal is. Glastonbury Grove is also where King Arthur died.
Yeah, why? I don't have any connection to King Arthur stuff.
You saw the Green Knight.
I saw the Green Knight. Yeah, recently. I just don't get what that adds. Like, oh, now it's Arthurian, you know? Mm-hmm. It just seems like it's kind of a hodgepodge of influences. I don't know. Does that have a sort of symbolic... Does that add anything?
No, well, so I think, I've been watching some other shows lately that have, like, it's time to reveal that this thing has existed for a long time reveals. And in the case of the other show that I'm thinking of, it's like, oh, it's been 30 years. And, like, the time scale matters, right? If something has existed for 30 years, then it's like, oh, like, one generation ago knows about it. But when you say, like, Glastonbury Grove is, like, it's like an endless portal that just has existed since King Arthur times or whatever, that just feels so far away that, like, it doesn't track with me anymore. I think it would have actually been cooler if they were like, Glastonbury Grove was a thing that we discovered, like, when Doc Hayward was a kid or something. I would have been much more likely to be like, oh, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, the way it is, it's just like, okay, yeah, throw some King Arthur shit in there. I don't think that matters at all. Who cares? Some stuff about lots of, like, it's time to throw in some numbers, 12 trees. There's 12 rainbow trout in Wyndham Earl's pickup. Whatever. Right. None of this matters.
And then there's I just know that you've been acting as if like oil is important, and there's a big cup of oil, and that's the smell that Jacoby smelled when he got attacked. And then Cooper, what?
We explained that symbolism in Joel's episode.
We did? Oh, yeah. But it's connected to the return, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's fleshed out in the return, I guess. But, like, it's also just they've talked about gas stations or convenience stores, rather. They've talked about just it smells like oil when bad things are happening. Oil is associated with evil. Why it's associated with evil, the answer is not that interesting. But what you just need to understand, like, for the sake of
technology thing or something.
Yeah, and that ties into the stoplights. But gotcha. We'll dig into that some more. The stoplights also have other significance that'll come up I think next week for us.
With Firewalk with Me.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then Cooper stays re-traumatizing Ronette Pulaski.
God damn, I was so happy to see her again. And then
the carelessness with which Cooper's just like, hey, smell of this? Oh, okay. Good.
That's
you're
super
scared.
triggering for you? Okay, great. Okay.
Awesome. You can leave now.
You're out of the show now.
Cooper, what the hell, dude? Come on. You can't treat a human person like that.
Ghoulish. He's just so hyper-focused on Annie now and how she is that he can't even think about Ronette. It was legitimately cool to see Ronette again, because she is more important to the show than the show gives her credit. Like, she is textually important, but just like we get a shot of the bridge before we go into the Black Lodge, and it's like, yes, the bridge started everything. Why are we not thinking about the bridge more? God damn it. It's right there. Wyndham Earl does take Annie into Glastonbury Grove. There's some nice parts of, like, Annie praying, which is great because she actually is showing that she's religious.
Yeah, I like that. It also made me think about how the Fire Walk With Me poem kind of sounds like the kinds of prayers she was saying.
It does.
Like there's a prayer feeling to it. I also appreciated that Wyndham Earl pointed the flashlight at himself when he said something creepy.
And then points it back at her like, it's now your turn to talk. It's like a talking stick or something.
Yeah.
He says, you and I have an appointment at the end of the world, which is me whenever I look at a big bucket of KFC. And then there's just a really good transition with curtains, and we bounce back and forth to a bunch of other stuff. Cooper does tell Harry that he has to go into Glastonbury Grove alone, suggesting that he knows that something's about to happen and that he's not going to make it out. I love the visual significance of Truman seeing the curtains, because Truman has always been, or at least the show's attempted to portray him as the realist who, the Scully to Truman to Cooper's Mulder, who's like, I understand that this stuff I understand that it's working for you and it's helped us solve crimes, but like, how real is it? And he finally gets to see it right with his two eyes, and he is broken by it. Like, he spends the night out in the woods, which is so scary. Like, Lynch and company are so good at, like, making the woods scary. It must be like 1 a.m, or if not later, when all this stuff is happening, and being in the middle of the woods. Are you joking? It's terrifying. just on a basic level. And he sits there with Andy, and Cooper has his whole adventure in the lodge. And then when he's about to get out, it's like morning, and they've stayed there the whole night. And Andy asks a couple questions.
Do you want a thermos of coffee?
Yeah. We don't have to listen to the whole thing because the pauses are so long. But he keeps asking, and Truman keeps going.
Yeah. He wants the coffee. He wants dinner. He wants dessert. He wants pie specifically. Love that. I also love that you can't even see his mouth move when he does all of that. He's just like, he's frozen. He just saw the freaking magic in front of him, dude.
Yeah.
He just saw his boyfriend get whisked away into fairy tale land.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy's just trying to be supportive. God bless the freaking dude. Love that. Love that for him. And waiting all night for your boyfriend is a mood. But here we go. We're in the Black Lodge. Michael Anderson is back as the man from another place. He's staring daggers at Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's Laura or something that's supposed to represent Laura. This is okay. From here on out, what we know and what we're talking about is mostly interpretive, folks, because while some of this stuff is fleshed out in the return, we are dealing with the same mystery that you are, because that's how David Lynch be doing things. That's how the show is. No firm answers. So
here's what we know for sure textually happens when Cooper's in the lodge. The Black Lodge is a place, as Hawk has said before, where you'll meet your shadow self and your courage will be tested. And if you have imperfect courage, something bad happens. You lose your soul or something like that. And that happens. Cooper meets his shadow self. It's a creepy Cooper with cloudy eyes who hangs out with Bob. And Cooper has imperfect courage. And I'm curious to see how if the return explains like what test Cooper failed or why he's here, why he has to stay. But this doppelganger Cooper escapes. Bob escapes inside of him. And at the end of the episode, Bob is in the world in this Cooper body. We know that happens. Mm-hmm. We know that Annie's body leaves the Black Lodge with Cooper. It's really not clear in this episode if she's alive or not. That's answered in the final dossier. Mm-hmm. Are you interested in knowing the answer to that question?
I know the answer to that question.
Should I say the answer to that question or not?
If people don't want to know about the book, jump like 30 seconds. This is not worth putting a spoiler warning up because we're not going to cover the book. But yeah, you should say it.
So yeah, Annie is alive. She's taken to a hospital. She's basically
comatose, right?
Yeah, she's comatose for a while, and then she wakes up after this point, and for like the rest of her life, barely speaks, except every year on the anniversary of her being taken to the Black Lodge, she says, "I'm fine," and like that's it.
She answers the question, "How's Annie?" Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, that's spooky. I didn't think of that. Mm-hmm. That's scary. But that's it. That's what happens to Annie.
Okay. That's our book spoiler moment.
So that's that. And then Wyndham Earl, the only other thing we know for sure is Wyndham Earl's fate, which is he has orchestrated this attempt to bargain for Cooper's soul with the powers of the Black Lodge. It's unclear what else he wants to do with the powers of the Black Lodge, but it's clear that he's here because he wants to like channel the dark energies or something. And he says, "Okay, Cooper, I'll let Annie go. She'll be safe if you give me your soul." Cooper says, "Sure, take it." And then Bob really doesn't like that. He says, "Hey, he can't do that. He can't take souls. He's just a guy. So now I'm going to take his soul." And he sucks Wyndham Earl's soul out. It's a burst of flame, and then Wyndham Earl doesn't have a soul anymore. And then Bob and Doppelganger Cooper chase Cooper around. But that's what we know. And then the things that we are interpreting are all of these appearances by various other characters and figures that Cooper interacts with in his time in the Black Lodge.
I have an interpretation of all of this. Pretty straightforward, down the plate.
Okay.
It's a battle of good and evil. This is the good people from the White Lodge coming to the Black Lodge and saying, Cooper needs help here. We're going to help him out. We're going to, whether it's Laura's good soul or whatever coming. She wants to help Cooper. She might get corrupted. Something bad happens there. We have the giant / the waiter and the man from another place who are also good souls. And they're all like, hey, Cooper, be careful and whatever. All of that is them trying to help him. But he is pushed to the brink by seeing Caroline and Annie and mixing up all these complicated thoughts in his head, and almost develops a childlike sadness here when he's like, oh, Caroline, Annie, he has you can hear Kyle MacLachlan right up on the mic being very scared, and faced with all of that fear of all this evil being put in his face, he agrees to the bargain. When Earl is like, will you give me your soul? He says, I will. And at that point, Bob is the one who's like, no, you don't get to have it. I get to have it. And the chase is his last opportunity to get away. He says, maybe I can leave with Annie. Okay. And then it's, you're in the Black Lodge. You're in the bad guy's house. It doesn't work like that. And he is stuck in there. He's stuck in the Black Lodge and even runs into Leland briefly. I love that shot where you have Leland again with the glassy eyes. And he says, did I kill anybody? Or I didn't kill anybody?
Yeah, he says, I didn't kill anybody.
And it's you're not even, in this world, you don't have to be culpable because you already died. You don't, you get to just live beyond culpability. And Laura screams and there's a lot of that good stuff. And then, the possessed Cooper gets out and the good Cooper is stuck in the Black Lodge. It's, again, fairly down the plate.
Yeah.
But just a lot of great directing, good imagery, recalling stuff. Cooper getting stabbed with a curved knife by Wyndham Earl is kind of cool, and then they reverse it. It's sort of just a cinematography and storytelling flex, or just showcase rather.
Yeah, I think my take on it all is I think every time we see someone with the glassy eyes, it's the same entity. So when we see Leland or we see Caroline or we see the version of Laura, those are all the same thing. That eventually becomes the doppelganger of Cooper and is all of that is his shadow self taking on these different forms to force him to confront his guilt and the biggest failings that he's experienced in his life. Part of it, his guilt over Laura Palmer's murder and not being able to solve it in time to save Maddie, his sort of complicated feelings about Leland and did Leland do it? And I think he's confronting his own, having to figure out to what extent was he responsible for Caroline's death and by extension what's happened to Annie. And I think Cooper imperfectly reckons with those things and imperfectly sort of takes accountability for those things, and his inability to confront that stuff is what leaves him open to Bob capitalizing on his fear and trapping him. That's sort of how I took those things.
That is definitely something to keep in mind as we think about Cooper's development going forward. Is what is he culpable for? Because Earl and even Jean Renault has made him so guilty. It's well, if you didn't come here, none of this would have happened. Josie wouldn't have shot you. Maybe Laura wouldn't have died. Maybe Ronette wouldn't have been hurt. All of these things that he's taking blame for. Maybe Caroline would have lived if you didn't do what you did. I've seen interpretations that even all of this Black Lodge stuff is in Cooper's head and that he manifests it as a way of his guilt, which I think is a really common version of this, and I believe that the show is going for a more nuance than that. I think that read kind of denies a lot of the material reality of Twin Peaks and says oh, it was all fake, or it was all him coping, all Memento or something like that, like a movie. Yeah. But the truth is that real things happen and he's coping with it, and we're seeing the impressionistic version of that coping in the Black Lodge.
Yeah, I think a version of that theory that I vibe with is there's part of me that thinks that Cooper killed Caroline still, the whole, and I imagine the return maybe doesn't really get into the Wyndham Earl Caroline stuff that much because I can't imagine David Lynch is that interested in those things. But if we just sort of take the initial run of the show as a cohesive work for a second and don't think about like how future things kind of prioritize or deprioritize things, I think there's a world in which Cooper killed Caroline because of what Bob says to him in Leland's body about like, you know about knives, don't you, Cooper? Remember that time in Pittsburgh. And Wyndham Earle is Cooper's shadow self, right? Because like the cloudy-eyed version of Caroline turns into Wyndham Earle. And to me, there is something to be said for the fact that, like, I don't know if we really need to get into, is Wyndham Earle real or is he a figment of Cooper's imagination or whatever? But he is like everything that Cooper could be if he sort of like was just completely without a moral compass. And I think there is something to be said for the fact that maybe that's who Cooper is in the real world or something like that. And the Black Lodge is this mental space where he is sort of, he has done like evil things and he is not consciously aware of them. And the Black Lodge is the place where it's like, you need to become consciously aware of the evil things that you've done. This is like, that's what hell is about, like making you aware of your sin and coping with it. And Cooper's like not doing that. He's refusing to do that. He sees Leland say like, I didn't do anything. And so he's in the similar space to Leland Palmer, where he's just going to feel like he's not accountable for the things that he's done or for the evil that he had that opened him to Bob's influence. So I don't know. I think that's kind of, because otherwise this doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because the evil thing that Cooper did is he like slept with somebody's wife. Like, is that the evil? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like it's worthy of this sort of like horror punishment. I don't know. Or the most evil thing he did was, yeah, like then what is the evil that he's reiterating with Annie? He's just falling in love and putting her in danger. I don't know. That's where it gets kind of confused for me, or where I'm not sure how to interpret this unless Cooper's done something even worse than what we've like physically seen him do in the show.
Right. I struggle to answer a lot of that stuff because I think some of it is going to get fleshed out, but things that we can take away from this are that what really works about this finale ultimately is the Black Lodge stuff is open to interpretation. It's exciting. And people were left with this for, as Laura says, 25 years, which is exciting. You know, people theorized and made guesses and all this stuff. I think what's also important to remember is like the Black Lodge stuff opens with a beautiful, beautiful performance by Jimmy Scott doing Sycamore Trees. Super good.
Yeah.
Super good. Beautiful. You should definitely listen to that whole. And just like music setting the stage, right? Because like, as I said earlier, this episode's very quiet, but when it's time for music to come in, they literally bring in Jimmy Scott to be like, hey, what's up? Hey, gang, I'm here to sing you a song.
Well, and what an incredible pacing choice. Like when Cooper goes into the Black Lodge, I was like, okay, so the whole rest of the episode must be Cooper's in the Black Lodge. And I had forgotten that we hadn't done the bank stuff yet. Like there was still other things that were going to happen outside of the Black Lodge. But to have this scene that is, like you're saying, solely about setting the stage. It's solely about, here's the tone. Cooper's here. He's in this room. It's creepy as fuck. Anyway, we'll come back to that in like 10 minutes. So that by the time you get back to it in 10 minutes, there's so much anticipation about what it could be, and you're primed to go along for the ride of all of these like different images.
Yeah.
I just think that as a like choice for how to structure the episode as a whole, along with it as like a self-contained minute of artistry, it was incredible. I don't think anybody else would like think to make that set of choices to create that work.
Exactly. And it keeps the pacing so sharp, because if you did like, here's 25 minutes of the other stuff, no, like a lot of people just wouldn't care. And then it's like, here's 30 minutes of the Black Lodge. But to keep it back and forth makes you go like, okay, when are we going back to Black Lodge? What's the next Black Lodge thing? Like, it is not the dream sequence at the end of early season 1 episode where it's just all self-contained. It's like, it's interspersed throughout this episode. We come and go from the Black Lodge to remind us that outside of here, love still exists and tragedy still exists, and, you know, men are still evil and all that good stuff. Twin Peaks is still happening outside of the Black Lodge.
Yeah. And to remind us that the Black Lodge exists in this world.
Yeah,
right?
literally,
that,
physically.
like, and we return to that world at the end. Like the Black Lodge isn't just a set of disembodied images. It is also a place that has an influence on the world. And that's important because the episode ends with the Black Lodge having the most significant influence on the real world maybe that it's had in the context of this narrative, in the sense that it has replaced the protagonist of the story with an evil husk.
Yeah. And the husk gets to walk around and be Cooper now, which is is the tragedy of this. Yeah. I want to talk briefly about the shooting script differences. I have a bunch of stuff here. A bunch of stuff here from the wiki that answers what I was saying about like the uncredited David Lynch stuff. So
this is the script that they brought into shooting and then it was changed like on set, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
So the credited writers for this episode are Frost, Payton, and Engels. However, David Lynch revised the script significantly sans credit, meaning that maintaining the episode structure, but altering much of the dialogue in many scenes, most notably in the Red Room / Black Lodge, making them more akin to the dream sequences. He also added more characters in deference to this being the final episode, some of whom had not been in the series for a while. Hence, Heidi and all that stuff. So, the following are things that were added. Log Lady and Ornette Pulaski were added post. They were not in the original script, which explains why they're like, here I am, and then I'm gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
The confrontation between Horn and the Haywards is generally the same, although there's more dialogue. In the original script, Doc Hayward shoves Ben, who strikes his head against the coffee table. A distraught Doc Hayward rushes to Ben's aid and apologizes. In the filmed episode, Hayward punches Ben, who splits his head open, and Doc Hayward reacts with terror and does not rush to Ben's aid. So, very much like, you should not come out of this feeling good about it, or feeling like, oh no, what a horrible accident, but instead to be like, Doc Hayward has to confront what he chose to do.
Yeah, he like basically just tried to kill Ben Horn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of Leo, earlier in the original script, Hawk and Briggs find Leo in Wyndham Earl's cabin, and Leo instinctively begins to speak, which sets off the spider trap.
Oh God.
Lynch replaced the scene with everything else.
Glad they didn't do that.
With the exception of Major Briggs, none of the other characters in the diner scene appeared in the original script. In the film episode, Leo seen for very briefly via footage from the previous episode. Pete Martell did not originally accompany Andrew Packard into the bank. Instead, Catherine Martell rushes into the bank just before Andrew sets off the bomb. Catherine does not appear in the filmed episode. In the original script, Pete's only appearance is in the sheriff's station. I was bummed that Pete felt like he didn't have to be there, but I get it.
Yeah, I think his presence makes the scene a little more fun, and also I think that us being bummed about that works narratively, because if it was just Andrew blowing up, I mean, I guess Audrey's there too.
Yeah,
but yeah,
this is an interesting one. In the original script, at the lodge's entrance, Sheriff Truman sees a vision of a dark woman wearing chainmail, holding a sword and shield. Why? Sure.
Just for Arthurian stuff, I guess.
There you go. Yeah, that's definitely that. The sequences in the Black Lodge are almost entirely different. Wyndham Earl has much more dialogue. There's no backwards talking. Laura Palmer appears for an instant and does not speak. The Black Lodge singer, Man from Another Place, the Giant, the waiter, Maddie, and Leland are not in the script. Wyndham Earl's fate is less abrupt. He ends up shackled to a dentist's chair with Bob as the torturer. I was bummed by the ending, the Wyndham Earl's ending. I've always remembered it being abrupt, and that explains
I guess that's
more.
Something else that we should have ranked is the ending of the Wyndham Earl plot.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Some more about that.
Well, no, just I feel like you spend the whole season setting up for like the big moment with Wyndham Earl, and then to just have him, you can argue that it's funny and it's like intentional that Bob is just like, no, get this loser out of here. No, fuck that. And erases him from existence. But it really feels like that is another example where you asked me to invest in the character and then removed them from the story.
Yeah.
Well, it ties back into the whole like how the show is made versus how the show is conceived sort of thing. Because maybe in a perfect world, Winterall would have been much more important.
Yeah, maybe this wouldn't make the show any better, and this isn't really what Twin Peaks does, but I would love to just be able to see Wyndham Earle, Caroline, Cooper, what they were like before everything went down. I just want to understand.
Yeah.
Because that is it could be a really rich thing, and is the core of like what's off about Cooper is whatever happened with Caroline and Wyndham Earle, and we never really understand it. We never really fully understand, is that why Wyndham Earle became the guy that he is because Cooper slept with his wife? Or is that just it coincided with the stuff that he was doing with Project Blue Book?
Yeah.
And his fascination with the Black Lodge? You know, was she under protective custody from Wyndham Earle? I feel like I don't fully have answers to that stuff.
Right.
And I wish that was a little bit more explained before Earl was killed, because what we got of him was just like a goofy cartoon villain man, which was fine to tide us over during the part of season 2 that was a goofy cartoon. But then when you bring him here to the serious, meaningful Twin Peaks, I want him to have some serious meaning to him.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a letdown. But I do think that it did work for me that Bob pops up and it's like, you can't ask for somebody's soul. Who do you think you are? Let me just take your soul. I thought that is a fitting end to Wyndham Earle. That's kind of like the fate that he has to have. But yeah, if we just knew a little bit more about him before it happened, that would have been nice.
Yeah, flesh the guy out just a teensy bit more, and then it's even funnier that they're like, nope, never mind.
Is that shooting script available anywhere?
It is.
To read?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious to read that.
Yeah, I can send it to you. I didn't read all of it because it's obviously a whole episode script, but it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then final thing from that note, sorry, I was reading about Fire Walk with Me like a freaking dork over here. The revelation at the episode's end that Cooper is now inhabited by Bob, okay, thank you for just saying that, is more subtle in the original script. In the bathroom scene, Cooper squeezes toothpaste onto his toothbrush, looks to the mirror, and smiles, with Bob's reflection smiling back. The episode ends at this point. In the filmed episode, Cooper squeezes the toothpaste into the sink, which I loved, by the way. The way it feels like it's like a child discovering how toothpaste works, or somebody who is used to, for example, squeezing the life out of people and feel like he's squeezing the life out of a toothpaste. He sees Bob's reflection, smashes his head into the mirror, and says, "How's Annie?" It's a little goofy, but it's also unsettling, which is David Lynch in a nutshell.
Yeah, the third How's Annie is funny.
Yeah.
But the banging the head against the mirror in the first How's Annie is one of the most terrifying parts of
It's the noise, dude. It's the and it's the fact that it's like a jump cut. Last fun bit of trivia I have, deleted scene.
Okay.
There's an unscripted scene which was shot and never used, which depicted Josie's body in the curtains when Cooper entered and experienced the rooms of the Black Lodge. Frank Silva, unaware that the scene had been cut, related the scene in an interview at the first Twin Peaks Fan Fest. Further investigation prompted by the crowd's confused reactions. And what's hilarious is that Richard Beimer, who plays Ben Horn, actually took photographs of Joan Chen's stunt double from those scenes. So, like, we can see what the woman who was going to be there was, who was going to stand in for Josie, because Joan Chen was not available, but that scene doesn't exist.
Interesting. Huh.
Can't watch it. But that's where we're left off. I mean, there's a lot more in the Black Lodge. I mean, the coffee imagery coming back, and the coffee going from liquid to oil.
Would you like some coffee?
Yes, I would. I just had some, but I would like more.
And then there's this great clip of the waiter interacting with the man from another place.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
And then, of course, he stands up and he says coffee like 5 times.
He like walks closer and closer and keeps saying coffee. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We don't have to listen to all of them, but this is him saying coffee.
Oh, yeah. Love the waiter. Love seeing the giant again. Oh, my friends, they're all back.
So you read that as the giant and the waiter coming to help Cooper?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, you guys aren't bad guys, are you? You weren't bad guys this whole time.
it makes more sense to me if it's just... Well, I think also the spirits are a little bit like fickle. They're not like objectively good and there are like objectively good and evil spirits like Laura and Bob. But then there are spirits who are like, I can kind of go back and forth, but their primary place of living is the White Lodge.
I see.
Yeah. Love this lore stuff. Whenever we talked about all the Black Lodge lore stuff, we're talking about this episode pretty much. And also, some future stuff. But that backward screaming, Cheryl Lee coming back to do more screaming over and over again gave me a headache, but in a good way. I think that stuff's impressive.
Yeah, that was really creepy.
Just the cutting back and forth between Caroline and Annie felt a little bit hammy. It's just like, hammy Annie. Just because it's like, did you get it? Did you get it? Cooper has started saying the two loves of his life. Did you get it? And it's like, yeah, I did.
I was thinking, what if this whole plot had happened where Annie was just like a Maddie situation where she looked so much like Caroline, and then it turns out that she's like a evil Caroline doppelganger or something.
Oh,
maybe that's like too much of an explanation.
Yeah.
This also is fine, but I think this would have hit better if we knew Caroline a little bit more.
Yeah.
She wasn't just like a narrative object. The Venus de Milo, some guy named Milo.
Yep.
That's in the red room.
Yeah, it's just right there. We just walk by it a bunch. It's great. Happy to see it.
That's something that Gordon Cole talked about, that statue, and it's in the red room, and it has some symbolic connection to like the beauty of these female characters who are also have their agency taken from them by the plot.
Well, it's also recreating
much like the arms of the Venus herself.
Right. It's recreating what we saw in the first dream sequence, because Venus de Milo was also in the first dream sequence.
Right.
But now we have way more context of like what it means. And yeah, it's great to see. It's a great piece of set dressing. It's a beautiful statue. Big fan seeing my homie de Milo something coming back. Golly, what else you got?
I think we could just sort of speak holistically about season 2 and kind of put a lid on it.
So I have your first question here, which is, now that we've really watched and dissected all of Twin Peaks, the original series, do we think that folks should skip any of this?
Right.
And I think we've soft answered this before, but now I can give a definitive answer, which is that it depends on what you want out of Twin Peaks. Do you want to watch The Return as soon as possible? Okay, in that case, you could watch season 1 up to probably the dream sequence. And then you could watch the beginning of season 2, 1 through 7, and then you could watch this. That's your expedited cut. I don't support it. And the reason for that is not only that, like what we've talked about 1,000 times, which is the lore shouldn't be what you're coming to the show for. It's about the tone. It's about the characters. It's about the mood. It's about all this different stuff that you get from watching all of it. But also, like, if you then come to season 3 and you're like, this one's going to be all answers, you're going to be disappointed there too. There's bullshit in season 3, guys. I'm sorry to tell you. We're not like out of dumb plot land. It's going to get stupid as well. Yeah. So if you hear like the plot doesn't go anywhere or is stupid, then you're already out. Like, you're already not invested in what Twin Peaks is trying to do, which is like, give us the whole story and fill out all of these different things, and not just what is the Black Lodge, what's the real meaning behind the murder and all that crap. Like, that's just not what the show is. You're denying yourself a lot of good television by doing that.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I'm conflicted on it. I mean, after having watched season 2, I think that there's entertainment value in the act of watching episodes from season 2, right? And there were a few episodes that I found boring, but there was no episode that I watched it and I was like, I wish I didn't watch that. Right. Because it's the vibe. You're sitting in the vibe of Twin Peaks. You get to see your characters acted out by these actors that you enjoy acting. And it's just entertaining in and of itself to watch the show. It never becomes unwatchably bad television. And even in the plots that are silly or brief or maybe tangentially related or not related to anything that's Laura Palmer centric, there's still ways that you can read into those things and find some sort of value in them. Like, I think the James plot is unfairly maligned as like, oh, the worst plot of season 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. I think the worst plot of season 2 is Ben Horn is Donna's dad. I think that is the worst plot of season 2 because it's nothing. It's just like a vapid soap opera plot for no purpose whatsoever.
Yeah.
Whereas the James plot, you can spend some time like learning about who James is and see the way that he tries to escape the problems of Twin Peaks and see how he recreates those situations for himself because of like his inherent character traits and his inherent like desire to damselify all of the women around him.
Yeah.
And I think that that speaks to larger themes of Twin Peaks. That's like Cooper's issue too, isn't it? That he has this sort of damselifying complex. So I think there are things that you can watch, and if you want to spend the time dissecting things in season 2, you can get value out of them as like an active reader of the season. That said, like you're saying, if what you care about is the sort of core of Twin Peaks, and you don't really want to invest in things that branch off from that core, there wasn't really anything that touched this core since Maddie's death.
Yeah.
I don't think. And the thing that's really strange about season 2, and I wrote this in my thoughts here as well. You know, when people talk about TV shows, people are quick to tell you, oh, you know, it's bad for a season, but give it some time. Right. There's always like, oh, the first 2 episodes are bad, but then it gets really good. Mm-hmm. And that's like, okay. But then if someone's like, oh, but the finale sucks, or, oh, but the last season's really bad, that's a reason to not watch something, you know?
Yeah, because you want it to end well.
Right. And I just find that interesting that people prioritize like the quality of the ending over the quality of the beginning of a show, because Twin Peaks inarguably begins incredibly well. It's like one of the best beginnings in all of television, I think. And this episode also is a really great ending, kind of in a self-contained way, and in the way that it speaks to the pilot, like you were saying, in the way that it speaks to key episodes from earlier in the show. But it doesn't really speak to the rest of season 2, which is, I think, what also complicates should you watch season 2 or not, because every single plot that was initiated in season 2 that's resolved here is hand waved away, pretty much.
It's blown up in a bank explosion. The guy's
blown up in a bank explosion. Away. Yeah, exactly. And you don't need to know who Wyndham Earle is to know that he's a bad guy that got Cooper into the Black Lodge. Mm-hmm. And you kind of already, I think we even introduce who Wyndham Earle is in Arbitrary Law or something like that.
Yeah.
Like people have already started talking about him. And you don't need to know anything else about him except generally who he is. So I don't know. I say watch the whole show, because just because it gets bad doesn't mean that or it gets worse, I guess, doesn't mean that you should like skip all of it, because you're going to miss out on some dorky moments. You're going to miss out on some heartfelt moments. You're missing out on some cool images. And I'm just like a completionist, and that's kind of how I approach things. But I can't fault people for skipping stuff, because the show doesn't fully cohere in every moment, because this episode and the later parts that David Lynch and Mark Frost put together intentionally kind of say like, screw that other stuff. We don't care. We're going to do this.
And like critique what you, the viewer, think is bad. Because I watch a lot of shows that fuck around. And like even, you know, you watch like a big Netflix original that everyone's talking about. Oh my God, the story is so exciting. Even take an example like Squid Game or even BoJack Horseman, to go a little bit further back. These are shows that like, yeah, we love how they progress the plot forward and everything feels important because we love digging into theories and stuff. But like millions and millions and millions of people watch Law and Order SVU, a show that begins and ends in one episode over and over and over again. So like, there's not one good way to watch a show. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong, seriously, for watching just the best, quote unquote, what you think are the best parts of Twin Peaks. But if you just want to watch a good show with some good vibes and like some soap opera stuff and an interesting mystery throughout, you should watch all of Twin Peaks. It's all interesting. And the frustrating thing, too, is even if you are like an obsessive lorehead, there's like tiny nuggets in every single episode. So you can't really fully skip anything, even if you're fully accepting, like, I want to skip stuff. But yeah, I am also a completionist, and I think, like, if I'm going to watch Frasier, for example, I could skip. I'm fine skipping around, but I eventually want to watch all of Frasier. Something like that. And that's a show that extremely doesn't need to be watched in its entirety.
Well, and what separates Twin Peaks from Frasier is that the show continues to be serialized, right? Even though some of the serialization is dorky or not your favorite stuff, it does continue to like tell a narrative that persists from week to week. And so in and of itself, I think that has some entertainment value.
Right. And people have gotten so much out of Twin Peaks that, say what you will, like, obsessing over why season 2 is bad, all you're going to do is discover that, like, making TV is really hard. Because at the end of the day, what people, like, from reading, you know, Laura's Ghost and also, like, other fan reactions to the whole series, people just like Twin Peaks regardless of the fact that the second half of it is weird, or the second back 2/3 of it are weird and different. We don't think about these things every day. In a couple years, I'm going to start forgetting about these season 2 plot lines. Like, they're here and gone. And so to fixate on, like, why aren't these better? Or, like, why can't these be good like the other ones are? Is, like, just watch. It's just a fun show, dude. Like, you're going to... It's not the most memorable thing of all time. And I think that ties into the way that people mythologize not David Lynch and Twin Peaks. And say, like, well, this has to be auteurist work. You can't tell me that this is made by more than one person. I don't believe that. But it is. It's made by people working to make a show for a network and who were asked to get way more episodes out of this plotline than they expected. And they made something really fascinating out of it. Episode to episode, they made something cool. I don't think you can deny that, honestly. It's just that some people also will try to say, well, what's the perfect version of it? Well, I don't really care about what the perfect version of it is, because this is the one that we got. And if you want to kind of to push forward a little bit, if you want what happens when David Lynch gets his druthers, well, dear listener, he made a movie.
Yes.
So as soon as they realized that Twin Peaks might get canceled after season 1, and David Lynch was kind of detaching himself from the production team, he went off and started filming a movie that began as a sort of prequel to flesh out the life of Laura Palmer, Leland Palmer, and Twin Peaks before Cooper got there. And so that, dear listeners, is what we're going to be talking about next time on PeaksChatz. It's 1992's Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, which is a horror film directed by David Lynch and written by Lynch and Robert Engels, who worked on early seasons of Twin Peaks. It's available on HBO Max. If you have the Blu-rays, it should also be on there as well. We are going to be watching the original scripted released version of Fire Walk With Me. I don't think there's like a director's cut necessarily. We are aware that there is a whole like 90 plus minutes of extra footage called Twin Peaks: The Missing Pieces. We will be discussing that as well the following week.
Yeah.
There you go. We will be joined by a guest for our Fire Walk With Me discussion. So definitely make sure that you watch Fire Walk With Me before next time, because we're going into the weeds, folks. We're going back to the woods to see what David Lynch thought was important for Twin Peaks. And I'm really, really excited. It's an incredible film. It's deeply unsettling. I can't stress enough, if you are sensitive to depictions of sexual assault and abuse, familial abuse,
content warning on that.
You might just need to read a summary or something and not watch it, because it's very intense. Beautiful, but intense. So we're going to be talking about that next time on PeaksChatz. Cool. Whew, John, I need to like take a breath. Holy crap. That was a lot of...
I can do the plugs if that would help.
Sure.
For you to breathe. So if you want to get in touch with the show, you have a couple options. You can email us, chatspod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and DM us there as well. We're at chatspod. If you would like to join in community with fellow listeners to discuss old seasons, you can do so on reddit.com/r/chatspod, where we're watching through, I believe we're in the Chatsbender season, and you know that means that on the horizon is the Chats Room. Oh, baby, here it comes.
Oh, sheesh.
You can also talk with fellow chatsies in our Discord, which is the $1 benefit on our Patreon, patreon.com/chatspod. The $3 benefit on that Patreon is thrice monthly bonus content, which could be us piloting stuff, us watching movies, or us just talking about whatever we feel like talking about. or talking about things suggested by you, the listeners, as well. And then sometimes I'll talk about X-Files episodes over there to just spice it up. And then $5 a month gets you thanked right here at the end of the episode. And thanks this time around go to Kat, Marcus, Nick and Pat of the Brothers at Infinite War, Fendon, Six, and Stefan.
Also, new patron Jen. Hello, thank you.
Thank you, folks, for supporting the show. You can also support the show by sharing us with a friend, by rating us on your podcast platform catcher of choice. And you can also support our dear friend Camilla Franklin, who created our logo, by finding her work at Camillastrator on various socials, which are linked in our description, our summary, whatever that's called, the podcast thing where we write words. Anyway, the last thing we do on our episodes is we talk about our chatsums, little recommendations for you between now and next week for you to snack on as you wait for the next episode. So, Alan.
Yes, sir.
What's your chatsum for this week?
Thanks for asking. My chatsum for this week is a film that I watched past weekend. If people are in our chats Discord and the Patreon, they know that in anticipation of the new Matrix movie, I've been rewatching just the Matrix sequels. So I watched Reloaded a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was pretty good. And I knew in chronological order the following one was The Animatrix, which I had never seen. And we've been thinking a lot about anthology shows here as we are revving up to talk about Star Wars Visions over on our Patreon. And so I watched The Animatrix a couple nights ago, and it fully slaps. Fully as in the parts of it that are good are like some of the best Matrix stuff that I've seen. There's a couple of not duds, but just like boring segments. It's 9 short films done by different animation studios and different animation styles that flesh out the universe of the Matrix, both in and out of the titular computer world. One of them actually goes into like how the robot uprising even happened. There's ones about characters that appear in the sequels. There's one about a character who discovers a glitch in the Matrix. There's like a ghost story, samurai story. It runs the gamut. And I think everyone can find something to like if you enjoy really exciting animation and science fiction. It's a lot of fun. And if you haven't seen it, it's probably worth seeing before the new one because it's got some really cool stuff in it. You should watch The Animatrix. What about you, Greg?
I'm going to do an easy chatsum here because I'm having trouble thinking of chatsums, and talk about something you just mentioned, which we discussed on the Patreon, Star Wars Visions. It's anime Star Wars stories. It's on Disney Plus. There's some good ones. There's some not as good ones. But I had a fun time just watching them all back to back, and I'd recommend that people do that and listen to our discussion about it over on our Patreon.
Did it get you back into Star Wars? I'm going to ask you this question again when we do that.
I've been into Star Wars. I'm not out of Star Wars.
Listening back to that Chatsminer episode where you put in so many Star Wars clips, I was like, this guy has never been off his bullshit.
Yeah.
Incredible. Star Wars Visions, The Animatrix, you have plenty of short films to watch in the next week, and then a long film to watch as we get ready for Fire Walk With Me. Yeah. Ooh, Michelle's going to get so scared. I'm so excited.
I'll see you again in 25 years. Meanwhile,
we didn't talk about the hand thing. I don't know. I saw a theory online that says that the hand thing is Laura pulling the key to her diary out from under something in her house, and I was like, that's really cute. That could be true, but I don't know.
I read something that it was meant to call forward images of Jesus and Buddha and also the goddess Shiva, and it's like about Laura being connected to both the earth horizontally and heaven vertically.
Mom, come pick me up. Laura's connected to the earth horizontally.
I think it's probably just a cool gesture.
It really could be. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Well, Magellan, thank you for being the doppelcooper to my Cooper.
Okay.
And thank you, dear listener, for listening to this episode of PeaksChatz. Wow. Bob. Wow.
You gotta actually reverse that in post.
Yeah, you got it.
Sounds good.
You know I will.
That's like the perfect reversible sentence.
Yeah, it's palindromic.
The whole sentence is palindromic, yeah.